Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is the podcast where we chase the truth wherever it runs. We pick up from Sunday some of the stuff we learned on the sermon, and we kind of go into it and go deeper into it, and lots of cool stuff like that. This is episode number 176.
176.
Thank you, Brent. And my name is Greg Harris. I'm the senior pastor at the church that sponsors the podcast, Olive Branch Community Church. We're glad you guys are watching and joining with us. And as we dive in today, we're going to talk about the church. We're going to talk about some fun stuff. So Teresa is also with us here. Why don't you say hi to everybody?
Right. Hi, I'm Teresa Harris. And if you have any questions, we'd love for you to send them to us. You can email them to us, rabbittrail@obcc.church. We would love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, it's always a hard
Or
one.
text Brent.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
There you
yeah.
go.
Thank you.
And that would be at 951.
Yeah. And my name is Brent Branchot. I'm the Connections Pastor here at Olive Branch Church. And first and foremost, we would love to connect with you, whichever listening device or watching device you do, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is. Subscribe, put the alarms on so that you get the latest episodes sent right to you. And so, boom chakalaka.
Boom chakalaka. All right.
Yeah.
So we have we've had quite a long week, and it feels like there's not been a long week. But what you guys been up to?
You start. I want to hear what you've been up to.
Yeah, lots. But this week I went to a new restaurant with Dr. Ariza.
Ooh, she's the head of our school.
She took the girls from the office to lunch, and we went to Blackstone.
Oh.
It was super cute. It has great ambiance, and it's not overly pricey. It's like comparable to Miguel Senior's.
How good
Maybe
was the food?
similar. I thought it was excellent.
All right.
This is our
Did
new new spot. Review the restaurant. Okay, go Brent.
And Blackstone, feel free to sponsor us at Rabbit Trail at obcc.church. But for me, it's been a busy week. I just feel like you just can't catch your breath. It does not feel like it was a week ago that we recorded the first one together. And so, yeah, no, I've had a lot of fun. We did the special Valentine's Day one. That was fun. And Nancy came in. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah, people don't know about that yet because it's not dropped. So
It will be. By the time this gets dropped, it should be
no,
dropped.
it'll be dropped on Valentine's Day.
I don't think we should drop it on Valentine's Day. We should drop it before so people could prepare, right?
That's
so
true. We
they're not
can do
going
it
to
on
listen to it on
Friday.
Valentine's Day. Listen to your wife. Pay attention to your wife. Don't
You
listen to a
shouldn't be listening
podcast.
to podcasts on Valentine's Day.
How romantic, honey. I got our night planned. Yeah, we're gonna.
We probably
Really?
would
that
together.
That was kind of my plan. So.
Yeah. So, yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh man, I've like every night this week I've been having like conversations, tough conversations, but I think the coolest thing I got to see was we had another pastor from in town. His name's Tony. He's just an amazing pastor at a local church in town, and just as he was walking a family through some difficulties, I just got to watch him masterfully care for people, kind of go through their past and their story and their history, and then elucidate some cultural differences. I was just, I'm still right now just like blown away just how well Pastor Tony just walked through that whole scenario. I mean, he doesn't watch this, but man, yeah, when you watch another pastor do great work like that, you're just impressed.
First of all, I'm blown away by the word elucidate. I never heard that before. But I'm also how does that work? Watching a pastor care for a couple. It's kind of, I picture like that Seinfeld episode where they're doing the surgery and they have everybody in the window watching and observing. You know.
No, nothing like that.
Okay, all right, yeah.
I was sitting with in the same session.
He was watching outside.
I was like looking through the little window.
Yeah. Wow, look at that.
Ooh, amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
no,
drop
it was-
a junior mint, people. And if you don't watch Seinfeld, then you don't get that. But if you do, you laughed. I guarantee it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So where are we going, Brent? What's going on?
All right. So again, we're still in the sermon series, Source Code, talking just about, has the church today wandered from its roots, and have we become something different than what the original church was intended for? So we just you were talking about really just kind of partnering together and just being a church, the universal church and the local church and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I was really, like, when it comes to the partnering together, I was trying to answer a question. So, like, there's a big issue. I met a lot of people who are like, well, I go to my small group and that's church, right? We as a family, we do worship together. Like, over the years, it's been an issue because in the evangelical church, it's kind of like, well, yeah, if you love Jesus and you get together, you're a church. But then at the same time, it's like you meet a lot of people who are like, well, I'm part of these big denominational churches and I'm under these structures. And you're like, well, that doesn't make you the church if you're just, because you're hanging out in that church. Like, there's more to it than that. So I was working through it. The answer, at least in the world of like many evangelical, even and mainly Baptist churches, is this idea that we live in covenant together as a local. That's what makes us a local church, is this covenanting together and covenanting to a leadership. And we use the word partnership. So that's kind of why I brought that into that idea.
And I will say, I like the idea that you used the word partnership. I think it has a better ring to it and a better mental picture of what it is than membership.
Right? Like what's the membership problem? Like,
the only problem I have with, and I mean, you've changed the name recently to partnership. We've always called it membership, right? The only thing that, for me, that is a hump I had to get over is, I think for the most part, I mean, if you're talking about somebody that knows nothing about church and, just a brand new believer and barely even heard of Christ, everybody else kind of understands what church membership is, being a member of a church. They may not fully understand it, but the terminology is very common. So then when you start saying partnership and not membership, I feel like, well, now we got to explain to you that this is kind of what we call this kind of what we call membership, and so I just feel like there's a caveat that you need to explain. So I always feel like, partnership. It used to be called membership, just so people kind of know what you're talking about. Because I'm part of me is like, the people that have been members for years, and then you're pushing partnership. People are like, ooh, maybe I need to do that, And it's like, you've already done that. Been there, done that.
No longer a member.
Yeah.
Howdy, partner.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
Woohoo! Yeehaw! I think
we're near Norco, so we need to do it. So,
howdy,
anyway.
partner. And like a rodeo, if you can stay on for 8 seconds, you win. But, all right. So
that's the lowest bar for partnership in all of the churches.
Actually,
I've
that's
met.
very difficult.
to stay on a bucking bronco for 8 seconds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. But not necessarily to stay as a member for 8 seconds.
Okay.
That's not as hard. And it's not as painful. So
But wait, so back kind of one
I
of
don't
the
know
things
about
that like
Just kidding.
I mean, one of the things we've always had pushback on the word on membership, right?
Mm-hmm.
People go like, I'm already a member, or I'm a member of Jesus. Like, what is that argument that you usually hear?
Probably just the normal, like, if you're feeling like you're joining a club. You're feeling like there's exclusivity to this, members, this is an exclusive group versus just the regular people that go to church. And so I think they kind of maybe push back because they feel like it exemplifies a caste system, within the church, which to me, you can slap me, but I believe there is a caste system in the church, right? I mean, in the sense that, we're all equals, as in, if we're believers and we're Christ followers, we're all equal in that sense. But to me, a member is someone who is maybe more committed to what is going on here, more committed to the vision and the mission and being engaged and understanding, what the mission and the calling of the church is. And so, again, somebody that just attends, they might just show up and go home. And then I would say, I'm not sure that they're as invested in what is going on and where the church is going than somebody who simply attends. And then somebody that's a guest, So I do think we don't show favoritism necessarily, but I believe that the more, even in personal lives, right? Even in our personal lives, the people that are more committed to our family and helping our family we as a family are going to be more committed to them, right?
Yeah,
You
you're
know?
going to give them values in
Right.
different ways. I'm going to listen to you more. You get better pushback. There's there's that connection. I mean, how you growing up in the church, Tress. So like, has membership ever been a tension point for you, or because I mean, you've got to do all these membership classes. You change churches, you can do it again, or
I don't remember doing membership classes at Crossroads. So I might not have ever been a member. So I was probably only a member at Sandals in here. I've never felt like not doing it. I don't feel like resistance to that. I actually love when people have a stake in the game. I feel like, especially in our culture, commitment is just hard to come by. And people just want to come and go as they please. And
no, because membership to me, I think of like your gym membership, or I got a membership to Netflix or whatever. It's like you could use it. It doesn't. It's more consumer based than it is like.
Yeah, I like the idea of partnership. Like, we're not doing this alone. We're all in this together, and the goal is, to reach our city.
And I do think that it doesn't have that exclusivity aspect to it, because it's like, we're partnering together for this purpose. Are you partnering with us?
Yeah.
And so I do think it's more of an invitational, thought process, or a teamwork process, mentality. So I do like the term better. I like that it really, I think, identifies what we're asking, of each other as a whole community. But I just feel like it's not as popular a term, so people don't readily know what you're saying. That's right.
We're going to trend start. It's
We're trendsetters.
We're going to be a trendsetter.
Yes. So again, when you hear the word the word membership, go, no. We're talking partnership, people.
Partnership.
Yeah. And then I'll go, I'm so wrong. And then you just go, yes, most of the time.
Well, I mean,
I've
you
talked
have
to
been
Nancy.
saying membership for how many years now?
Yeah,
as
I know.
The guy running the class.
Have you found it hard to switch the terminology, or?
I feel like right now I use
Interchangeable.
they're interchangeable for me.
Not in this podcast.
Yeah, no. But I will say that when we did and started changing everything over to partnership, it was remarkable how many things you had to change because the terminology was different.
Yeah. That's when you do the search document and you swap out the term.
There you go. So I got a couple of questions. We'll get into church membership or partnership, later. I got a couple of things, but one of the things I just kind of wanted to chew on. What?
I just think it's from membership partnership, which is partnership.
Partnership. There you go. So one of the things in your sermon, you were talking about one church. We are one church. Universally. So like all the believers from the beginning of time to the end of time, we are all part of one church, universal. And then you have the local churches, right? And all local churches are called to the same thing, right? To go make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then part of the strength of the local churches is that local body of believers that gather together, and we're working together to fulfill that commission that Christ gave us. So again, if all of us as believers are one church, right? Then how do you reconcile that with the fact that we are all divided so much with denomination practices and stuff like that, that we're not, it feels like we're not one church. It feels like we're a lot of different churches.
Yeah. No, I think that it's okay to say that we are a lot of different instances of the universal church, and that there are some people who take the label that it doesn't belong to, like they're, the universal Unitarian church. Well, it's not really a correct, because the word church actually in our English comes from, I kind of went through this whole journey, like where it came from. And it was originally a translation from ecclesia, which means assembly or gathering. And it became the Latin term ecclesia, which was, you'll hear that in iglesia in Spanish and different stuff, but it literally meant like the institution and the building and the people, and which is what church means. It belongs to the Lord. So here's these universal Unitarian places that belong to the Lord. And you're like, you don't believe in the Lord. Like, that's funny. You can't call yourself a church. But it's become such a catch-all term for a religious group of people. For me, I think that when we think of denominations, there's obviously a long history going on here. So the last time there was really a universal church in visibility, like we all were under the same leadership and governance, would probably be in the 3rd century AD. So we're talking 200s, 300s, because there's always been these splinter movements that break out. The Gnostics, you've got Docetists, then you got the Arians, and so all of these kind of little groups, and the church was constantly like, yes but no, yes but no, and so there's this movement in the church, but the main body of the church that we would call like the Universal Catholic Church at that point would be East and West together until about 1000.
And you're not talking Roman Catholic. You're talking...
Yeah, no, before the Roman
global.
Catholic Church would really become the Roman Catholic Church around 1000 AD when there was what we call the Great Schism. And honestly, there were just lots of arguments against the Eastern Orthodox Church and their view of leadership model, which was a group of bishops who were running everything, archbishops. And they believed that in the Roman Catholic Church, their archbishop was basically the inheritor of Peter's power. And so, no, they're the one true church that should lead all the other churches. And so that was part of that schism. And then they made this big debate over whether the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Son only, that's the Eastern from the Father only, that's Eastern Orthodoxy, or the Father and the Son. And so this big fight. It was really an odd thing, but they split the church. They split up to East and West, and it wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal, but it wasn't like it didn't become significant until along comes the Muslims, and they march in and basically destroy all the lands of the Eastern Orthodox Church.
And what time period is that?
That's going to be around that, like, it's happening up through the 600s, 700s, and then after the 1000s to 1200, that's when Constantinople, which is the capital of all the Eastern Orthodox Church, is being constantly barraged and fought, and then it'll finally fall. But before that failure happens, the church gets into the Western Church, the Catholic Church gets into the Crusades, and one of the foibles of the Crusades was a group of militant Western Christian quote-unquote knights come marching in, and they attack Constantinople, and they literally wind up killing fellow brothers and believers, and that just utterly divided the church completely at that point. So it's been a long journey. And then the Eastern Orthodoxy has their little divisions. They have Greek Eastern Orthodox, Russian Eastern Orthodox, all arguing that they're the true Rome kind of stuff. And then you got the Roman Catholic Church, and then we have the Reformation that's split off. And that's what we're a part of. We're Protestant. We're part of the Reformation background. And that's going to have high church models, which is smells and bells and priests, or in some cases it's like Lutherans and Anglicans. They have priests and different, not Lutherans don't have priests, but a high level leadership.
Sorry.
Yeah. They have a high level leadership. And then you've got a next level is like you wind up with this group of kind of Calvinist Anglicans. So this is in England. And England has their own church. And these Calvinists in the English church are like, no. We don't think that these priests and all this stuff and the king should be over the church. And so they're called the Puritans. And the Puritans don't want to be Presbyterians, which is what the Calvinists are. And they wind up kind of coming to America. They become what's called a Congregationalist. They vote on their beliefs. And from that comes Baptists, who are, no, we're a covenant together. And that's really a revivalist movement, is what we would call it.
So did the Baptists create church membership?
Yes. In a lot of ways. I mean, because in the Presbyterian Church, you baptize babies. In the Anglican Church, you baptize babies. In the Catholic Church, you baptize babies. Along come the Baptists, and they go, no, you baptize only believers. even if I consider them my brothers, and I do, I think that other group there could be brothers and sisters in Christ. Functionally, we can't agree because I won't baptize a baby. I mean, we won't baptize babies. So we baptize people who make a profession of faith. We're a revivalist in that sense. We're a conversionist faith, where we believe that the transformation of the soul, the conversion of the person, and that expression in baptism is the critical piece that sets you apart. Now you can covenant with the church. You can connect and partner in. And so that's that whole process. That is unique to Baptists. And then there's non-denominationals where they're basically Baptists and they remove their names. And so that's kind of the idea. And so, but at the core of everything is still the basic belief of what we've been talking about. Is this idea of the apostolic belief that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins, that the Father has created everything, that the Spirit of God's in us and leads us, and Jesus is coming back. There's this very simple core set of beliefs, and how that gets fleshed out it becomes the big debate. So even the Reformation weren't saying the Catholics weren't Christians and they weren't a part of the church. They were just saying you're corrupted. You need to clean it up. Get back to the Bible. Get back to the basics.
Yeah, like the indulgences and
right.
They were critiquing specific things. Yeah. Yeah,
indulgences, even the power of the Pope and the councils. They didn't dismiss the Eastern Orthodox. They didn't really. They were kind of like, I don't think they really debated with them much because they weren't around. But the Reformation was an attempt to reform the Roman Catholic Church back to the basics of the Bible, and it's just kept going. It's just kept kind of fragmenting in the sense of subtle belief systems and why I can't be with you. Today, all that's disappearing. In fact, the latest stuff I was reading is that people don't identify as Baptist, Methodist. Ever since the Jesus Revolution in the 70s, it's kind of this new people who just call themselves Christ followers. And they really kind of just hold to the Apostles' Creed. And they can be found in Reformed churches. They can be found in non-denominational churches. They can be found in Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. They're just kind of everywhere. And they're just sort of we like this way of worship, but we really just believe in Jesus. And so it's kind of a watered down aspect in theology, but it is this sense of let's get back to just following Jesus. Let's just get back to being after him. And I could go on and on about how it all splinters even further with all kinds of different movements and things like that, in America especially, but in the United States. But in general, our denominations are created out of a love for Jesus and a seeking to follow him faithfully. And I think our modern time is kind of we've gone too far with denominations. They're good and they're helpful in some cases, but we got to stop just fighting over all this silly stuff. We got a world to reach. So,
I mean, speaking of fighting over all this stuff, okay, so you talk about we are one church, right? And then there are denominations, but when it comes to the Catholic faith and the Orthodox theology and stuff like that, in some areas they are so different than what you would call.
Share some of those. I mean, you've been to Rome.
Okay, like for me, and I didn't grow up in the Catholic Church. My wife did. So we went on the tour to the Sistine Chapel, right? And they're taking us on this tour, and I'm impressed. Then the lady that was leading the tour, she was Catholic. She went to Notre Dame. She got her master's in Catholic theology and all this stuff, so she's very well versed. And we're walking up, and we come up to the statue of the Immaculate the Immaculate Conception. It's still football season, people. The Immaculate Conception, right? And we're standing there looking at this, and she's talking about it, and then she goes, she's like, now, I will say this. A lot of people are confused when we talk about the Immaculate Conception, and they think that we're referring to Jesus' conception. We're not. We're referring to Mary's conception. Mary was conceived immaculately. And right then, I'm just, what? And I looked at Nancy, and I'm like, what is she talking about? And it's like, well, yeah, that's what the Catholic Church believes. And I'm like, why? This, and I mean, literally, I was sick to my stomach. I felt like my skin was crawling. Heresy,
I've taught you well.
And I was just so like uncomfortable at that point, and I'm trying to get Nancy to explain it to me, and I'm like, okay, I don't get it, right? I mean, I get that the Immaculate Conception, because she was like, well, in order for Mary to be holy and all this stuff, then then she had to be conceived naturally. And I'm like, well, then
does it stop there? Like,
yeah,
do her parents?
That's what I'm saying. Like, well, then for her parents to conceive her, wouldn't they have to be? And then how far back does that go? It just makes sense to me that it started with Jesus. Mm-hmm. Jesus is different, and I just was, and there was a couple other things, but I mean, a lot of the other practices and beliefs that they have, and praying to saints and having mediators to God that, apart from Jesus Christ and all this stuff is just, we would almost say it's, if it's not heresy, it's like on the verge of heresy, and so we have very strong differences. And I mean, a lot of the primary issues, there's one God, 3 persons, Jesus died on the sin. So the basics, we would agree with them on. But would you consider them and us one church, because we have such radically different beliefs? Or is it more like, well, we're not really like one church, we're more like second cousins, once removed, I mean, I joke, but what would you say to that?
Well, and I think here we're getting into the discussion of like, are the establishments of these belief systems / literally hierarchies of leadership, are we one organization? No, we are not one organization. So that's the danger of that word church, right? But are we a universal church? Are there people who are worshiping in a Catholic church that trust in Jesus Christ to be saved? That reformers believe. Nobody's ever stated otherwise.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, where you find true Christians, we are a one universal church. Like, would you say that everybody at Olive Branch is a Christian?
I was just going to say, that was one of your points.
No, only the members or the partners.
It's only the partners.
I'm kidding.
No, but I loved that point because, people are always wondering whether or not the church that you're going to is legit, but they very seldom ask, themselves,
Right.
am I legit? Do I believe the core beliefs that make me a Christian?
And that's that. And that's what I think for me is like, it's important to note that, there are true brothers and sisters in all of these churches. I sometimes I go so far as to even say there are some very naive Mormons who might actually be Christians, and they just don't know it. And they may realize...
They don't know it because they don't understand their own theology.
Right.
Well, there's like a distance.
They trust that Jesus died on the cross for my sins. That's what we say. But they don't understand their theology. They don't go through... And that's potential. I mean, the danger is the further you press into any form of theology, you have to keep going before you can get to really understand it. Like, for example, the Immaculate Conception. That is like, how could you possibly get there? And I had to, and I've done this. I did this experiment on myself for, like, I forget what I was preparing for in a conversation, but I was like, can I convince myself of this? Can I make an argument from Scripture for this? And so the best I got to was I started with, okay, so Mary has Jesus, the Word in her. So there's this analogy that I could make from the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant, which has the tablets within it, and Mary is like has the Word of God within her. And so if the Word of God is within her, she has to be holy, like the Ark of the Covenant is holy. And so
and if you touch her, you die.
Right. Yeah. And so that's why she's a perpetual virgin. She can never be sullied and made common ever again. So that's the argument for perpetual virginity, that Mary needs to be never touched in a common manner sexually in order for her to so she's perpetually a virgin. This was argued very early in the church.
So then how were the other children born?
Well, they would say they were the children of Joseph of his first marriage.
Okay.
In fact, the real legends about Mary is that she is born immaculately conceived holy and perfect.
This is
And
Catholic.
This is a Catholic. It is pre-Catholic. This is a kind of, I forget the title of it, but it's a very interesting story that kind of becomes, it's a fan fiction, and it comes from the proto-evangelium of James.
It's like the first fan fiction.
It's some of the first fan fiction. It's from AD 150, pretty early. It's this kind of super made-up story about the birth of Jesus, only it goes all the way back to the birth of Mary. And it's this picture that Joseph's this old widower. Mary takes a lifelong vow of virginity because she's raised in the actual temple. Like, it's this whole made-up story about how she could be truly holy. And this was kind of so famous and so powerful that it gets quoted by some church fathers and eventually becomes part of that. Well, the perpetual virginity leads to the question, well, no, she could never at any time have been like common. She has the word of God in her. And so it just kind of pushed it back further to her birth. And that's about as good as I could get. And it didn't convince me. It doesn't even convince me of the perpetual virginity of Mary, because God can establish holiness over something, make it holy for a time, and then she remained holy. Marriage isn't an unholy thing. This is a really weird thing that happens in the monks and some of the church fathers in the early churches. They think somehow all sex is really bad. Even marital sex is like, no. That wouldn't be a problem for Mary. She's not being common at that point. So it's a very... I love that they elevate Mary in that she's a very special woman. She received an extreme... I think she's a picture for... that I think we've lost in the church of something beautiful for women to enjoy and to contemplate. I don't know. You could jump
No,
in.
I'm just like, I don't know history very well. So I'm like trying to, time period wise, like when, I know that in the Catholic Church there was like, like the monks don't get married. So like time period wise, like when did that come about? So like, there's something connected there, because like in order for them to be holy and men of God, they don't get married, they don't have sex. It's kind of like the same idea with Mary.
The church early on, the men were getting married. There were those. There became this kind of moment with Origen. He kind of is like, no, it's bad. There's this kind of understrain that was derived from certain sects and certain strains. I think in the fight with Gnosticism and some other stuff like that. I'm not totally clear why this happened, but eventually the monks and the priests didn't get married anymore. This is the monks' reaction is happening as
way later.
Constantine is becoming a Christian, and the people are rushing into the church. The response to this brand new imperial church is, well, we're holy men. We're going to go out into the deserts, reject all of that corruption. They're like their own little reformers. But they become monks, and so they form these cloisters and these groups of people, and they weren't getting married, and they were like, Mary becomes almost this mother to them, and she gets venerated, and I think it just continues to grow as they become the seedbed of the theology of the church through Thomas Aquinas and several others. So I think there's a lot to that, and I think Augustine adds to this because he was a sex addict and he was fighting his nature and his addiction as the powerful Mr. St. Augustine that he was. So it's fascinating how all this gets mixed into the church. And so I think that what you got to, all that rabbit trail, welcome to the rabbit trail, is to say that I think there are people who get into their churches and they get just enough of their theology and become dogmatic about their theology, but they don't realize that what the argument's attempting to do and why it lands. So I think that there can be priests who understand where it came from and go like, well, that's not a dividing point. I get it's a difference. And I would say, those people are probably Christians. There's this point where some people get so dogmatic. You don't believe what I believe, you aren't. And I'm like, whoa.
Well, even Protestants do that with end times and
And I think that's when you're starting to put your theology in front of your salvation by faith.
So can you put, what are the things, can you just like rattle them off really quick, that you would say that Catholics believe that would take them out of the orthodoxy? Like,
That corrupts them?
yeah.
A belief that the sacraments seal you into your faith.
Sacraments?
Sacraments being, I don't know all of them offhand, but first would be obviously communion.
Yeah.
That is taking the Eucharist is very, very sacred to them, and it's almost like it perpetually keeps their faith alive because they're imbibing the literal body and blood of Christ, and
And there's a difference between something being sacred and something being
Salvific.
salvific.
Yeah.
And this is, they wouldn't say it's salvific, but they would say that it continues their salvation. Like if they didn't take the communion, they would cease to become Christians. It's this same thing. Like baptism is one of those. Marriage is considered one of those sacred rites that is part of that. And then I know last rites is a big deal, which is when you're dying that you're blessed and to move forward. And it's because they do hold to a concept of purgatory. Another thing that I think is a corruption, that you're going to continually work toward your entry into heaven. And so it's gotten away from a relational understanding of your relationship with Yahweh, and it's become a works-based attitude in certain things that would lead then to indulgences, which
which not everybody knows what that is.
Right. So an indulgence is that you would pay money to move your family member who is in purgatory through purgatory faster, because there is a great bank. The best way I can explain it, I'm not trying to be like snarky, but there's a bank of righteousness that has been banked by the saints. Mary and all the saints are such holy people. They've kind of credited themselves so much goodness that because Jesus started them off, and then they invested and it grows in a sense, and then they now have this excess righteousness that they don't use, that they can give to people, and the church can release that, and they would say, hey, you pay some money, that's a good deed to care for the church, and therefore that righteousness is going to come upon you in a greater manner.
So essentially they're putting their faith in something other than the blood of Christ.
Right.
So then what would be with orthodoxy?
Orthodoxy holds, the shift with orthodoxy that I struggle with is the veneration of the saints in such a manner that you are literally looking into the windows of heaven, that you have a better access to God through the saints than you do through Jesus. So prayer
And the
is
word,
often,
right?
Yeah, and the word. That the councils...
So they put the saints above God's word?
No? Yes, they put the saints above God's word. They would put the councils above God's word. But most critically is, if you do not belong to their church, you are not saved. They put the belonging to the church as the most critical thing.
Yeah.
And so, because we hold the councils, they have, like, I think 9 councils that they hold to, versus like the West that is 7. And there's that aspect. They also believe that there's this kind of division between Jesus and his work and the presence of the Spirit, because the Spirit only proceeds from the Father and doesn't have to come through the Son. There's a secondary kind of relationship with God that is, yeah, Jesus died for our sins, but we get to be deified and become like God through the Spirit. And so there's a very different mode of talking about salvation even. Sometimes Jesus almost is venerated more than he's even worshipped. Now, I'm not saying they would never agree with that, but it is just Eastern Orthodoxy is a very different approach, because they're not dealing with the law. They don't deal with judgment in the same ways that we do. So I would say that they're good to a point, and then it starts again to fragment after, okay, well, we receive Jesus. And I actually think both of these come from a historical problem. Like, imagine you're a church, and I don't know if we said this at our live podcast or not, but did we? Like,
I don't know.
Where you're a church and suddenly all these people come rushing into your church because Constantine is the emperor. So Constantine's the emperor. All these people come rushing into your church, and wham! You've got, your churches have exploded in size. You just come out of the hole from under the ground where you've been like, oh my gosh, we've been persecuted all these years. And now you're flooded with all these politicians and people who want the emperor's love because, hey, we're going to be a part of the church. And I think what the response to that was, we need to build all these very clear routes to ensure that, because we don't have to evangelize anymore. Everybody's coming to us. Now we just have to sift through the wheat and versus the chaff in the church. So they produced all these strictures and structures that ensured that you really were truly a Christian. So you proved it all your life. You're not some politician or some person just trying to get in right with Constantine or the emperors. So I think that answers a lot of the kind of the beginnings of why Eastern Orthodoxy and Catholicism look so different from the biblical version of the church.
Now, you were talking about the sacraments, and that's basically, I don't want to say a continuation of your salvation, right? But communion and all those things. And then you said marriage is one of those, right? That, it's a holy institution, and you're sanctified through it, and that's a salvation kind of issue as well. So I get in the Catholic Church, right, if they want to hold the marriage vow to that esteem, where like nuns, they symbolically are married to Jesus, and I think they even wear wedding rings, and so they would consider themselves married. What about the priests? They're not married, and are they married to Jesus as well? Is that their philosophy, or
I was just quickly looking up. It's a holy order. So it's a different way. So that's how they view singleness. It's like you're in a holy covenant and a holy order together. You're covenanted together. Otherwise, it's your job to go get married.
Okay.
So those are the two routes of transformation. Be a part of the holy order and forsake marriage, and be a part of the give your life fully and completely like Paul did to the ministry of the gospel, or get married.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I get that, really, like when Paul said, it's better to not be married, because you don't have roots. You can just pick up and go wherever God calls you. If somebody calls you, you don't have to go, honey, is it okay if I leave? I mean, I get where ministry would be easier to just be fully invested if you weren't married. But I mean, I think marriage has been a blessing to me, for sure. I don't know where I would be without her. All right. So kind of changing the subject a little bit, going back more into the church. When it's talking about the local church and local churches, if somebody's a Christ follower, claiming to be a Christ follower, and they're attending a local church, but they're not engaged, they're not serving the church, they're not really on mission with the church, they're not even giving or anything else, would you consider them part of the church? If they were just, I show up at worship time and I leave when worship is over, and they're really not fully engaged with the church, but they're a believer, would you?
Well, I just was thinking, well, they're definitely not a partner.
What's your thoughts on it first? I mean, I've talked a bunch. I'm just kind of curious.
I would say they might be part of the global church, right? Because they're a believer. They might be saved, right?
They're a member of Christ's body in the sense of the...
But I would say, no, you're not. You're not part of the local church, I mean, I don't think you can be part of a family and not participate in the family, in the family structure, in the family, goals. If you're just a neighbor that pops over every once in a while and says hi, you're not a member of the family. And so I would say, no, they're not part of the local church because I believe this: the local church isn't just a building that you visit. We are on mission together for a purpose. And if you're not partnering in that, then you're not part of, you're not part of the solution,
Okay, so what about like our global workers? They go into a place that has no church to go plant a church. Are they the church there?
Yeah. I mean, their church might not be very big, but I mean, how many people does it take to be a church?
So what's the difference between their family going to another country to plant a church, and they're doing their worship and they're trying to bring people together, and somebody going to their small group?
Well,
You see the kind of the tension.
I would say there is a difference between going to a small group and leading a small group. You know, I think when you're looking at the missions, our missionaries that are out there, that is part of who we are. God has called us to a specific calling, which is go in all the world and make disciples. And so when we send somebody out there and they're willing to do that, they are partnering with us to reach an area of the world that we are not present in. And so I would say absolutely they're partnering with us for
And
who we
also,
want to be.
when
as a
we send them
church.
out, there's usually preparation there. So like the church or their organization is over them. That's where the leadership part comes in. I guess that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, and there's a partnering already, right? That's what you're saying. They've covenanted with the church. They're just an extension of our church in another place to form a new one. In fact, if you talk to them, they're not there to become the church in the area. They're there to start the church in that area. And then, I mean, I would wonder if they felt like the church had started and ran and they were like, well, they could potentially come back to the States or whatever, and they would be like, we did what God called us to do until the next one. Okay, different thought then. We've got the same scenario, but now this person has a physical inability to get into the building, or to, how do they be part of the church?
I mean, really, hopefully, as a church, we could come along and pick them up and bring them here. You know, if they absolutely couldn't, they were bedridden. You know,
You're going to bring a bedridden person to church?
yeah, they got wheels. They got hospital wheels
Gonna
everywhere.
wheel their bed in?
Yeah,
Well, no, because you're saying,
and I'm totally kidding. I said unless they were.
Oh,
were.
you said
But
unless.
You're also
I'm
mentioning
sorry.
that you're
I
just
missed
bringing
it.
them to church. I'm not saying that. Say they're watching online. That would be they're watching the service. What are some routes somebody who may be only online be able to take to partner in the church still, to be part of that local church? Or is there no ability to be a part of a local church only through an internet portal? This is a question people have asked about the web-based concepts of church.
I mean, my thoughts would be twofold. Number one, if you couldn't and you were home, one of the things I would encourage them to do, if they could not be here physically and they had to watch online, is communicate with us. Reach out to us as a community and let us minister to you. Let us go and and minister to you in a significant way, but also let us know that you're on board and you're praying for us, and keep that community. Just like if Nancy's on a business trip or something, it's not like, okay, well, you're not at the home, so I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, she's calling me or I'm calling her, and we're staying connected and staying in community. Yeah. And I will also say that it's not always the church's job, or responsibility to communicate with you,
You mean it's not the leadership's job?
Yeah, but I mean, you have to also
He's
kind
saying
of,
that they have some responsibility to communicate with the church.
right, and to let their needs
reach out.
known. If it's somebody that is capable of coming to church, and they just choose to not because, hey, during COVID, I realized I can watch it on TV, and I feel like I'm getting everything on TV that I would get if I went to the building, I would warn you that you are not. You are not. We were created in the image of God. We were created as He is a community, that we were created for community. And I even say this during the partnership classes is, if you think that you could thrive outside of attending church on a regular basis, there's so much power in community because we were created for it. And I always say this, I love comedy. And I'll watch dry bar comedies, on Netflix or whatever. And after the hour of watching him, I sit there and go, he was funny. But I didn't laugh one time.
Yeah.
But if I go to a comedy club and I watch these comedians, I am laughing the whole time, there is something synergetic and something so
Being together.
That's the new word for the day.
Yeah.
Synergetic.
Synergistic. And so that one too.
That one
Synergistastio is the Greek term. That's the Greek term. But there is something intrinsic of being in community together that brings life to it. And I don't think that you can thrive out on your own by yourself.
Oh yeah, I think so my advice, I love what you just said, by the way. I think the other thing I would say, if you are watching just only online, like, you can do a lot. Like, there's a lot that you can participate with the church. Definitely you have to communicate with the rest of the congregation. Definitely you have to communicate to the leadership and those who are there to equip you. But if you are say you live away from, you love the teaching, you love the worship, even online or whatever, you have the ability to invite people to your house and do it together. You could start a small group. You could literally become a church plant. Like, now you're being the church, and if we're working with you to do that, that would be an actual ability to connect. Some people are homebound and they're watching online and they're helping with data and making sure things are getting processed. Some people are even able to make phone calls and care calls and be part of the prayer team. You don't have to not be a partner in the church if you are in a situation where you can't get to the building.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of things we can do to continue to be partners of the church. And so I don't think we have to believe that just because you're watching online doesn't mean you can't be a partner. Right.
I agree. No, I was just thinking about one of your points from your sermon. You talked about that the communion of the saints, basically the church is a team sport, and one of the main things that we're doing is seeking holiness together. And the other thing you said was we must give support to fight sin. And I feel like, that's such a huge aspect of the communal part of church, where we're all like going in one direction towards God and fighting sin and like desiring holiness. And when you're at home alone, you're not going to be able to do that, unless you invite people into that, unless you invite a community into that.
Like, I'm thinking, because I am thinking of that. Like, I mentioned the. If you were in first service, you didn't hear the second and third service. I mentioned the Stranger Things scene, right? Where have you watched Stranger Things?
No, I watched the first 2 seasons, I think, and I only watched them because Tucker and them were into it, and Nancy was watching them with them. But after that, I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm not.
Yeah. So I mean, I talked about the scene, but my clarification in all that is, like, what you're watching in the scene of this young kid coming out as gay and everybody loving and hugging him and is what I would call a secular confession. You're saying, this is who I am, I can't change, and everybody goes, oh, we love you. And I think a Christian confession is, this is what I've done, this is my sin, and I want to change. And I know it's hurt you, and I know it's ugly, and I know it's gross, and they all go, okay, yeah, but we're here with you. It's the same ending picture, the confession is different. And I agree, you can't have that just at home watching a screen. You can't have somebody know you and be vulnerable. And yes, sin, I think, does grow in those senses there. And that we're committing to one another, that somebody would call me out, check me. I mean, it may be the irritating aspect at times as a pastor, being a part of the church, where everyone wants to tell me what I should have said and what I really should believe. But at the same time, it's the beautiful part of being part of the church, where we're wrestling this out together.
Well, and it's not as beautiful when somebody in the audience doesn't know you at all and is kind of dictating to you. But when you know somebody really well,
When
and
they're a partner.
they're like in your life, like for me personally, that's actually one of my favorite things about friendships or relationships, is when somebody can be honest with me and call me out in a loving way, right? I don't want them to be mean about it, but when they call me out, like, it actually makes me feel safe, because I feel like, okay, this person isn't lying to me and they care about me enough, because it's hard to be honest with people. It's hard to call people out. And so when somebody is bold enough to do that, that's somebody that I typically want to be closer to.
And then the final thing, we'll wrap up with this, is why do you believe partnership or membership is important, and to encourage people to take that step?
Again, I think that if it's you're covenanting. You're becoming more. You're a part of the local church, like we've said. One, for that support. Two, for that you get a bigger voice. Like if you're going to covenant, now we're partnering.
Mm-hmm.
You get to say, hey, I think we should do this, and we're going to lean in a little better than if you're just sitting out there and you're consuming instead of. I think the church is better with you than it is without you. I think the church is better when we produce together than when there's some that just consume. I think consuming is a part of the journey. I think you gotta sit there and take in and listen for a while, and God allows the seed to be sown, but it's not there to just keep getting watered and sown. It's there to bear fruit. And when you partner, you are saying, I want to bear fruit in this church with these people in that mission together.
Yeah.
And did you want to say something?
I was just going to say there's nothing more beautiful in a church when the people are like using their gifts together.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, for me too, to encourage anybody that hasn't taken that step yet. And I love our tagline, right? With membership or partnership, whatever you want to call it. But it was the idea of move from going to church to being the church. Instead of just being a bystander, being completely engaged in the mission. And one of the things I think that are important for people to go to a membership class and go through that process is, number one, I do believe that a lot of people, believers who are unified in their beliefs to a large degree, right, go to church for different reasons, or have different. This is important. We should be social justice warriors. This is important. We should beat down these people. That's not necessarily.
I hope that's not one of the reasons.
But they have their
partnership. Are you running,
exactly.
man? Roamed and cattle.
Yes. Yes. Team brutal. Team. But I mean, just people go to church for different reasons. Sometimes it's tradition. Sometimes it's community. So So I think what membership class or partnership class is to bring alignment, to remind people, no, this is why we go to church. This is the mission that we are on. This is the mission that we're called to. And I will say all local churches, right, are all called to the same thing, the Great Commission. That's it, Now, how each one of them aims to do that, has a vision to make that happen, to have structures and strategies and everything else is different. So you can't just go from one church to the next church and understand how we're going to get this done as a community. So it's part of understanding that
so it's kind of like our communication to the people.
Yeah.
This is who we are as a church.
Right.
So that way they know what they're partnering with.
Right. And alignment in that, but also alignment in being unified spiritually as well, because a lot of people call themselves Christians, and they have a lot of unorthodox beliefs, So it's more like, hey, to really be a born again Christ follower, these are kind of the essentials that you have to say, yes, I believe in that, and I try to live that out in my life, and so it's a way for us to kind of vet people out as well, to kind of go on. Yeah, maybe being a member here, maybe, you need to wait till you're more aligned with us theologically. You're welcome here. You're welcome to attend. But
wrestle it out. Yeah.
Yeah, but wrestle this out, And again, I think sometimes people can come here, and they might come here quite a bit, and they might even give, and they feel like they're a member, But also, because I'm committed to the church. But you're committed to the church. Are you really committed to the vision and the mission and the strategies that we are going to bring in? Because I don't think you can really commit to something unless you understand it, as best you can. So, understanding that and then committing to that, I think, is a more meaningful commitment than to just go, I got an olive branch tattoo, and you're not committing to the name olive branch.
No. Greg is worried.
But I will say this, if you want one.
If you want.
Yeah. Well, you can get a rabbit trail one.
You have an artist, a tattoo artist, coming by on Sunday.
Yes.
Just kidding.
And again, we talked about indulgences and people, giving money and stuff like that for stuff. So if any of you want to just throw out some indulgences, send them to Brent B at obcc.church.
No.
My Venmo account is.
I better excommunicate you now before lightning strikes.
I don't even have a Venmo account. Just kidding.
Or
but I'm going to get one.
You can text him.
I'm horrible. Yeah. But
all right. So thank you guys. No, this is going to kind of wrap up what we've been talking about. And hey, you may have some more questions. You may be like, that's not how that works. Awesome. We're here to learn as much as we are here to have a conversation. And so send your comments or your questions to our email. It's rabbittrail@obcc.church. That's rabbittrail@obcc.church. And so a couple things. Number one, if you want to go deeper into a conversation about the church, I advise you guys to really jump into a good history of the church. One of them that we recommend, and we recommend listening to it on Audible or whatever audiobook style you like. It's called Church History in Plain Language. It's by Bruce Shelley. It's Church History in Plain Language, and it's a pretty easy way to listen to the history of the church. Awesome way to open your eyes to all the different things that have gone on in the church and a lot of what we talked about today. And so hope you check that out. We love that you guys would do that. Also, we want to thank Jacob, our producer, and we want to thank Dale, our new editor. He's
Ooh, Dale. Woo!
Yeah, thank you guys for all of you watching. We do this for you guys. Let us hear from you. We love you. God bless you. Have a great rest of your week.
Check back.